I am, as was introduced, Leandro Melendez. I'm going to be talking to you about the agile transformation, how to do it, what not to do, and some topics. But what is going to be in the agenda today? I am going to first to give some introductions, some startups, and then I'm going to give you some examples, some things why agile and waterfall are almost not compatible at all. And then I'm going to give you some examples of the do's and don'ts of how and what to do for this agile transformation that you are going through. And in the end, some questions and some comments if you have any. So first of all, introductions. For the ones of you that might not know me, aside from the introduction that has been given, I am Leandro Melendez, aka Señor Performo. I have been and keep being a performance tester, a scripter, a manager of the performance testing area at Qualitest, and I'm more or less an idealist. I have had lots of experience in terms of projects for load testing, but at the same time, I have been around several projects where I had the chance to look at lots of mispractices, bad ways of doing things, or even ridiculous ways to doing things, which made me try to educate and help people. That's when I created this identity of the Señor Performo, where through a blog, I try to help educate on terms of load testing, but as well testing in general, because it's really important. And after that, I got the chance to be the host of the Spanish version of the Perfects podcast. If any of you speaks Spanish, at times I'm invited on the English version as well. So that's pretty much it. That's who I am. And you might say, you are a performance guy. Your specialty is only one dish, cooking one type of thing. Why are you coming here to talk to us about Agile? Well, I don't only do performance testing. Most of the time, I'm around several different areas of testing where, of course, being Mexican, I knew very well how to cook some automation tacos, to do some good schnitzels for tests, which we call in Mexico milanesas. Why not as well some integration pizzas and maybe even agile sushi. So I have had a lot of experiences. I have been around many different situations where we had to figure out things and identify where some others went wrong, where many organizations and customers were trying to embrace these new agile methodologies. And I say very much trying, because many of you here might be already into it, thinking on it, or thinking that you have already done the agile step. And while trying to do it, probably you were stumbling a little bit, having missteps. And don't worry, it's okay. Don't be ashamed. Don't be nervous about it. It happens. Everybody, absolutely everybody that I have been exposed to in this type of attempts have had those problems. So don't be shy. I'm going to share some of those stories, some of those knowledge experiences with you, so that hopefully you can get some of this. So Agile, why is it there are so many problems around it? First of all, it's a little bit confusing because it has many forms. Multiple practices share the principles for Agile, making it even more complicated, and it's very easy to get confused with them. All of those flavors that we have some distinctions that if you ask a specific DevOps person, me calling it Agile, or doing some of these mixes might get offended. Don't worry, I understand it. It's a little bit like me being Mexican. I understand that to describe to you what ingredients are on chilaquiles, we have tortillas, salsa, chicken, and cheese. But if you ask me what ingredients are on quesadilla, well, we have a pressed tortilla with chicken, beans, cheese, and salsa. Well, what is then on enchiladas? Well, we have a rolled up tortillas, a little bit different, with chicken, cheese, salsa, and beans. Anyone dares to wonder what is on some tostadas? Well, it's again a pressed quesadilla, a pressed tortilla with chicken, beans, salsa, and some cheese. If you told any Mexican that those are the same pretty much, they would be a little bit insulted. So that's why I understand a little bit. They are different, but they share some common details. And that's why it's easy to confuse even from past practices. Here, a little trick question. How many of you can distinguish which ones on those that I have listed are not agile? Because there are so many that sometimes it's difficult to tell even which ones are not. For the sake of speed, the first one, PPV, probably you're familiar with pay-per-view. When in the old days we had to go through it. And PMS, ask any of the ladies or gentlemen, ask your wife or your girlfriend. They might be able to explain to you a little. So there are many pains that organizations go through when they are trying to do this agile transformation, especially when they come from waterfall principles. These changes on a part is because every piece is affected when you are doing these changes. Every little piece on your project and your pipeline, everything changes. Testing changes, especially testing. So when you are attempting this transformation, it's very important that you do the right step. You do the right actions to do this transformation. Otherwise, it can become a monstrous transformation, which many organizations that I have been on have experienced. Many old practices trying to sneak in from waterfall days are making it difficult, are making it monstrous. And what I come today to try to explain to you, to help you or give you some ideas, is that on your organizations, when you are attempting it, you have a beautiful transformation instead of being a monstrosity. But first of all, I'm going to do a quick exercise. I cannot get direct questions from you through the box right now, but I'm going to give you a few questions just to make a few points that are going to be useful later on the presentation. What I'm going to ask from you just right now, lift your hands and let me know how many of you fall into those categories that I'm going to ask you. First, who here is involved in the creation of software? May anyone raise hands? I hope to see many hands everywhere because we're here in the business of creating software. Thank you for the hands. Now, who here is involved in the creation of good software? I would hope to see more or less the same number of hands, right? Last, I guess you don't see this coming. Who here is involved in the creation of awesome, incredible software that you cannot stop scrolling through the screen, that you wake up and this is the first thing that you do? It's so awesome that you don't want to put it down, even if it's a billing system. I don't see that many hands. And that's a big difference because many are worried or involved on delivery dates, requirements, reaching your goals rather than delivering awesome software, which is the ultimate goal that we are looking to, even in testing, because we want our software to be incredible, awesome, and our customers not to be able to put it down. So to move on, I am going now to show you a little bit of differences in between waterfall, agile, and some of the attempts that have been done and why it is not so cool to keep trying to merge the old waterfall styles and practices into these new modern days with all the agile flavors. So many of you might be trying to get some practices from the past and might be finding that they are not so suitable to agile, cause problems, cause a lot of issues, which is totally understandable. These practices, try to bring them into these modern days, would be a little bit like trying to come up to the office with something that was cool before, like showing up at the office with bell-bottom pants, which might have been awesome in this time, but nowadays it might be a little bit weird. In the same way, it would be like trying to put gasoline or doing an oil change in an electric car, Or even worse, I know, speaking of old fashion trends, I'm sure our friend Christopher Reeve rocked the super fedora hat. But again, if you try to bring that nowadays into the office, feeling like that guy looked so cool, why can't I? Well, it's different times, different needs. And if you even try to pull it off, it might have unwanted consequences. It might be going a little bit wrong. Or even like the beehive hairstyle for the ladies. It can get a little bit awkward, wrong, or even look bad at times. So what are the problems that are coming from trying to do the things in the old way in these new agile days? The first source of problem is speed. As many of you might know, things are happening sprint by sprint so fast, so often, that you can barely keep up with all that is happening. Second is that we are getting constant change. We're something that was needed one day, the next day, the next sprint, the next day, or the next iteration is not needed anymore. So we're getting constant changes in all of the requirements that we're getting. So to try to keep up through automation with all of this happening, often it's not fast enough, often can be overwhelming, and it can become exponential because every new change makes our automations grow and to have more and more and more. So some common mistakes to try to make front of this, to fight this, is try to do more. Try to work more, and produce like crazy, many different works. And I know that it can look like it's a good idea initially, but eventually this little kitty, this little automation will start biting you and will not let you, if you are just trying to make it faster, more. The next one is to try to do it faster. And often we're just like, how can we optimize this just to make it faster, make more, the old things that we were doing. And often what you will get when you're trying to do this, as I said earlier, you will just stumble. So to try to not to fall into these situations, as I said, the title of the presentation, I am just going to show you some examples of how to act smarter around this. Because if you keep trying to do this, the automations that you have can end up being monstruously huge. You can accumulate technical debt that sprint by sprint you won't be able to keep up with the changes on your automations. And eventually, in the automations that we had in the old days for waterfall, they were slow. You would have to wait a lot of time for them to finish. So the whole set that you have eventually can get to a point where there's not enough time in a sprint. And they can get so wild that it will be like a dog pulling you all over the place. Who doesn't feel like your automations are pulling you all over your sprints? So first, stop doing things the old way. You gotta let go of those old processes, old fedoras. Don't try to automate everything at the front-end level. Don't try to automate all the full processes. Because if you just focus on trying to do this in every variation that you will find, you can end up with billions and billions, well, not billions, but probably millions of automations that can get to be unmanageable. And I say this as a true story. I heard of a couple of customers that just reached a number of 1 million automations. Just imagine having those, some of them really old, years old. Why do you still have them? Because on top of that, with Agile, you can fall into what is known as the automation fire hose, where you won't be able to manage it. It's going to be so fast coming at you that you are going to be out of control like that poor guy. So what I'm going to tell you consists mostly on try to change your mindset, change even your heart, and change the ways in which you are doing things. Even if it sounds a little bit counterintuitive at moments, it's a complete change of perspective. Because let's go through an example. In the construction business, when I'm trying to create a building, a structure or something, you have to go to multiple steps, which tended to be kind of slow, because first you had to cook the bricks, start to put them then together in the oven and everything, then bring the plaster, mix everything, bring a guy to put the plaster on top and start assembling the bricks. And all of this process tended up to be very long, tough. The workers had to be a little bit buffed to be able to take it on. Why don't we do it smarter? Why don't we, and especially if the building is going to be changing a lot and moving and walls coming down, coming up again, and like an agile building, what can we do? Why don't we go to the first steps and start working it from there so that the followings are faster, easier? We don't have to work that much or have a strong worker. And how can we do this? Why not a Lego brick? I know it might sound silly and a little child's play, but it's true. There are companies already thinking ahead and creating bricks that from the day one, they are ready to be assembled, put together. They have spaces. They are created in a way that even a robot can put them together, so you do not need a worker with the bricks. This might sound a little bit like science fiction, but it's a true story. There are companies already claiming that with these bricks you can go faster, they are more environmentally friendly, and many other claims that most probably are true. And on real constructions nowadays, this is happening, and we can see them installing. These ones just have clips around so that you don't have to use that much cement. So how can we get faster? How can we truly test smarter, automate it in a smarter way? I'm going to go now through a list of do's and don'ts, things that often we are trying to do in many companies, organizations that work or might not work, against the good ways, the best practices that are recommended and that have shown to have better results. First, as I mentioned, don't get a pile of automations. Don't get a lot of them. Don't let them come together. Don't let hold up to the past things that you already worked on them. Because if you keep holding up to the past, you can end ending up with a pile of things that you really do not need, but they have sentimental values. No. It's not needed. Really, it's just slowing you down. What we should do is what the Frozen Princess used to sing, let it go. Let go all those things. Let go of old practices. Let go of fixed scopes, definitions, change of requirements. Embrace the change, the reach, the priorities. Let this, be prepared for this rather than just afraid of it. Change your mindset, embrace the change, be prepared, push any boundary that you need, and try to get this perfect application rather than just, it's because the automations that I had before. Another don't that is a big misconception that I have seen in many places is to think that Agile will make your process faster to deliver a final product or that it will be cheaper. That's a big misconception. Or as well, trying to cut corners and try to adapt things that won't fit. Seriously, some of those things won't fit, and you can end up hurting yourself. What you should do is to have in mind that Agile probably is going to be a bit slower, it's going to be a bit more expensive to embrace those methodologies, and you might end up feeling like you're burning more money. But what do you get in exchange? Well, you will be faster to adapt. You will be easier. If the wall is thrown down in the building, you will be able to construct a new one in a different place faster. Because everything is to have happy customers that think that everything is awesome and that cannot put down your application, so that you will get very good satisfaction from them. Because in the end, that's what brings revenue or why you are creating the application or why you need it. Another don't is to have the mindset that you can do QA at the end of the process, at the end of the sprints, that I can do it after, or I wait for a hardening sprint. Why not? And then is where I'm going to pick up on everything. And this doesn't work. Usually, at a Friday, at the end of the sprint, all your automators, your QA people were finally there, dropped stuff, and they're definitely not happy because they cannot go home. That's a big problem, and you should not be thinking on the QA terms to leave them in the end. What you should be doing is doing them at every step. Okay. Every step of the life cycle of your process, your module, the requirement that you're working on, you should be thinking of quality. You should be doing it, even in the very early steps, as early as possible, even in the interviews. You should aim to graph quality at the interviews and the requirements, you must be able to define them. Embrace that mix in between the tester, the developer, and the customer. They must be hand in hand all the time, at every step, defining what is the requirement, what's the quality requirement, and how are we going to attain it in an easy way, in a smart way, an efficient way. Next, a big don't is to think that you will use the tool, the one and only that will solve all our problems, that on its own will be able to save us, much as like being the one from the Matrix. That is not a good mindset to trust only one tool. We'll get into that. Another misconception is to think that with that tool, you'll be able to get rid of skilled people, and that's not a mix that works. There's no tool that will save you from having good people, and vice versa. You cannot get rid of the tool when you only have good people. You should embrace both. And that's why you need to embrace as many tools that help you to automate, to have all the processes that you have. You can get your hero with a sword, a boomerang, a shield, anything that might be needed during this QA quest, you should embrace it. As well, you should make sure that all these tools interconnect with each other, can communicate, that they are not isolated modules that cannot work with each other, and passing from one to the other is going to be painful, slow, and not smart. Again, you have the hero. You need a hero to wield those tools. If you buy the best of the best and you just give it to a newbie, it will take a while. You might not get the best results. It's a little bit like in the kitchen. If you had a chef and I told you, I bought the Knifeonator 3000, and with it I'm going to get rid of the chef, of course you won't. You need a chef. You need a skilled person. And at the same time, you won't leave the chef with only one knife, or a silly knife, or a butter knife when they have to chop beef or different things. You need skilled teams and good tools, multiple tools that will help them to prepare whatever is needed, because quality requires many levels of testing. Another one, to leave things just for UA automations. Don't focus on only automations. Don't focus on only end-to-end processes, big-ass exercises of testing. Or, and one that hurts me a little bit personally, is to do only load tests. QA doesn't focus on only UI automations, only UI tests, or only end-to-end processes. Or leave the bug detection at the end. That's a very wrong release, because if we wait only for the moment when we finish the script or are about to release to detect those big guys, we'll be in trouble because they will appear. What I would recommend you to do first is to join a cult. This is not like an infomercial. Join the pyramid cult. The pyramid cult, or the snowman of automation, the pyramid of automation, gives you some guidance on where you should focus most of your efforts, because most organizations have the pyramid upside down, where they are trying to do as much as possible on the top, manual and front-end automation, and they are almost neglecting all the bottom. Why you should do this in the pyramid scheme with the big part at the bottom? Because it's cheaper at the bottom, it's faster, it's more efficient, and at the top it takes you quite a bit of time to automate those processes and to detect them. So it's easier to steer if there are changes. So to not extend this so much, the last don't, well, set of don'ts. Don't think that you will be able to automate once everything is stable. That thought might hurt you as well. Don't wait until everything is ready so that you can throw it at the basement where you have all your automators and QA people, or even there are multiple basements, right? In some companies, the developers are one and then the QA people. Don't wait for that to happen and leave people waiting to finish. What you should do is to be aware that your application, especially if you're an Agile, will always have moving pieces. Everything will be moving here, moving there. I have this, I have that. And you should prepare, or be mentally prepared again, for that change. Embrace it, be ready. Create things that you can test easily. You can change the tests easily if they break. Promote that your teams talk to each other. I have said this a little bit, but sometimes this war in between developers and QA people, I really do not like it. It hurts every organization when you have it. Why don't you see them together? Even make them switch roles here and there, and you should have a better understanding in between them. And again, don't let them be separated, catching something that you finished, and just at the very end, figuring out what happened. Destroy those silos. Bring them down, mix the people, help them to understand each other. And with this, you'll have a better, smarter, and greater automation efforts. And I think, not to go way longer, that's it for now. One quick question that I often get, and I want to give you some check notes. These are some of the sources of what I'm been telling you. The Agile testing books by Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory. The teams from General McChrystal, which is not a technical book, but in other environments will explain to you a lot how this Agile transformation can happen. The Agile Samurai, of course, lots of examples that are fun and easy to understand. And last but not least, the experiences of test automation from Dorothy Graham. It's a treasure of experiences and things that you can learn about automation. With that, I want to thank you very much for being here, for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of what I know how to do.
All right, let's get up for Leandro. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you very much.